Hello everyone! Today I wanted to give you a quick video with a potential answer to Kai'Sa decks, Riftbound's current boogeyman. The card is Divine Judgment. I'm going to put on screen the breakdown in the chapters, but in general, I'm going to break down what Divine Judgment does, why it's good into Kai'Sa, how we can use it smartly, and lastly, how almost every leader in the order color, because that's what Divine Judgment is in, can use it and how it synergizes with the other colors. Except Garen, because we're just going to ignore Garen. Divine Judgment is an order card for 7 energy and 2 order power, says each player chooses 2 runes, 2 units, 2 gear, and 2 cards in their hand, recycle the rest. It's almost a complete reset to the game, and it's not the easiest card to use correctly, and takes practice and planning to get it right and get the most out of it. I'm not going to sit here and say you jam 3 of these in your deck and you always beat Kai'Sa. That's not the case. But it's also worth noting a couple things with Divine Judgment if you're planning on using it. Things like Deflect don't count because Divine Judgment doesn't target them. Also, recycling a card with Death Knell with Divine Judgment doesn't actually trigger the Death Knell effect, because for Death Knell to actually trigger, you need to take the unit from any portion in play directly into the trash. And another note on Divine Judgment, if you're planning on playing it, is that the 2 order power actually kinda doesn't really truly matter that much, because you're recycling all but 2 runes anyway. You just need to make sure you have enough order runes to pay the power cost when you attempt to cast Divine Judgment. So at 7 energy, if you run 7 order runes in your deck, if all 5 of our unchanneled runes are order, we would still have 2 order runes to pay. So that's just like one way to ensure that you can always play Divine Judgment when you have it in your hand. Now you may be wondering, why the hell is this card good against Kai'Sa? What does it do that she can't handle? Well, there are a couple things. First, let's look at the downsides, which are pretty obvious. Both players give up a lot. Your hands, your boards, and your runes. And you're gonna say to me, well, won't both players just keep their strongest units, and then it doesn't really matter? And you're correct. We can mitigate this by planning our turns ahead of time, setting up a board in such a way it's hard to remove our own units with good might breakpoints and protection, which we're going to discuss later on how we can achieve this. And we can keep cards in hand to remove whatever our opponent leaves behind and execute our game plan. Another downside is, since you play this on your turn, your opponent gets the first turn with 4 runes, since they get a channel 2 at the beginning of their turn. But at 4 energy, the worst thing that they can really do to you if you're playing against Kai'Sa is deal like 4 damage with Void Seeker. If they have a Ravenbloom student, they can go Cleave Stupefy, which is a big swing, but we can also mitigate this with a little setup. And it would put them in top deck mode after they did this, because they're playing multiple cards and they only had like 2 cards in their hand. So that's not always a bad thing. They get 1 big burst and then they're kind of tapped out. Why Divine Judgment is so effective against Kai'Sa is that she runs a lot of small removal spells, and her scary units are Darius and Thousand-Tailed Watcher, and her scariest spells are like a Cathian Rain. Most of these cards will take 3 extra turns to come out after you Divine Judgment, with Darius being the exception at 2 turns. Darius would require multiple cards to truly be scary, so we're still not that terrified of him. This all means, usually, if Kai'Sa has them in her hand when you Divine Judgment, they almost can't keep them in hand because they're going to sacrifice so much tempo and get so far behind by the time that they would get to play them. You get to remove the top-end haymakers from Kai'Sa's arsenal, so that's just a really strong play for us. Kai'Sa just draws a lot of cards, so if they've drawn 5, 6, 7, 8 cards throughout the course of the game before you get to your Divine Judgment turn, once you play it, you've essentially negated all of that, and it makes Kai'Sa actually play fair and on a more even playing field. So negating a bunch of their card draw with Divine Judgment is also a really strong thing to do. I've made a Kai'Sa discard like 6 cards from their hand because they had 8 in hand whenever I played it. Kai'Sa's strategy also relies on her cheating the game effectively and not paying power costs for her powerful spells. Divine Judgment also negates that aspect of Kai'Sa, since no matter how much they save throughout the entirety of the game, we're now all reset to 2 and we're all on an even playing field. Essentially, the play pattern is this. You get larger units to hit the board, preferably targeting 5 or 7 might, as those are pretty beneficial breakpoints against Kai'Sa. These breakpoints dodge Void Seeker and Falling Star respectively, which are some of the bigger removal spells that Kai'Sa can use on their turn. We can have protection spells ready as well, like Zhonya's Hourglass, or in Sett if you have a buffed unit, since he naturally can protect units that are buffed by recycling 1. So if your Kai'Sa uses the now limited spells to kill one of your units, well, they just don't. And once you Divine Judgment, you almost are guaranteed to score 2 points on your next turn, and maybe even the turn after. If you kept good removal or unit protection, Kai'Sa will have a hell of a time removing your units. I've been down 2 points to 6 against the Kai'Sa and won solely off a well-timed Divine Judgment. So the quick tips. Plan out the turn before and after you Divine Judgment. Set up a board with 2 units, ideally 5 or 7 might, since those are key might breakpoints against Kai'Sa. Try to set up protection or gear if you can. Since Kai'Sa doesn't really run gear, any gear you run gives you more value out of your Divine Judgment because you get to keep those. Think about what your opponents will keep and how 4 runes can help them. Typically, the worst case is they can deal 4 to 6 damage to whatever you have, but both come at a cost, and with limited amount of runes and cards, that cost is going to be inflated. Try to keep your combat tricks removal or cheap units that you can use to either keep your stuff alive, kill their stuff, or just reinforce your board. Don't panic. If Kai'Sa's at 5, 6, or even 7 points, once we Divine Judgment, if we can push them off the battlefields and play smart, they will have hard times recovering in time. Try to have ways to protect your units. Cards like Zhonya's Hourglass or Sett's ability lets them keep their units alive longer. If we can prevent Kai'Sa from killing our stuff and we can kill hers, she's gonna have a bad time. And lastly, battlefields really do matter with Divine Judgment. I personally love Reaver's Row and Windswept Hillock. Reaver's Row, which says when we defend, it lets us move a unit defending there to our base. This lets us capture a battlefield the turn that we Divine Judgment, and then also somewhat protect that unit from an opposing Kai'Sa's attacks. Because if they send all their units in to kill our unit, we just move it back to our base where it's nice and safe. So that means if they want to kill the unit at Reaver's Row, they're gonna have to use spells. But remember, we planned our turn ahead of time that make these spells really not that great of an idea and not that efficient. And Windswept Hillock is also great because it gives units their ganking, meaning if you conquer there on your Divine Judgment turn, on your next turn, you don't have to move that unit back to your base to conquer the other side. You can just go from battlefield to battlefield. This really lets us step on the gas after we Divine Judgment, which is what we really need to do. Once you play Divine Judgment, it's all gas. Keep going and put on the pressure. So next, I want to go through almost every Order legend except for Garen and talk about how they each can synergize in their own specific way with Divine Judgment. But let's start off with what they all have in common. Order itself. No matter what legend you use, they always have access to all the Order cards. First off, Hidden Blade is just a great card for either your Divine Judgment turn or even the follow-up. If we control a battlefield, you can play Hidden Blade with Hidden and then Divine Judgment. This means that we essentially get to play Hidden Blade for free since we were going to recycle those runes anyway. Hidden Blade is good even if Kai'Sa removes your units with spells, because you can just reveal it and then kill your own unit to draw 2. Since we get the same result of our unit dying and Kai'Sa still having to spend all of her energy to play her spell, it gives us a lot of card advantage right after we Divine Judgment, and that's a big deal. We essentially double the cards in hand after we play this. And Hidden Blade is also a good card because it's naturally hidden. Being able to play a card hidden at a battlefield means that it doesn't count as a unit on the field, a gear on the field, or a card in your hand, giving us just extra value around our Divine Judgment. Another great card in Order is Fiora, who for 4 energy is just a 4 might unit that says when she's mighty, which means 5 might, she gets deflect, ganking, and shield. So if we can find a way to buff her, which we can in most decks, Fiora is Kai'Sa's worst nightmare. Since the spell that can now take her out efficiently is like Falling Star, requires them to recycle a total of 3 runes. Since each target with Falling Star triggers Fiora's deflect, and if they use Kai'Sa's legend ability, it only knocks 1 of the 2 power costs off. So if they do that, well, they recycle 3 of their now 4 runes to kill 1 of our units that we might even have protection for. That's pretty good, and it's probably over. Chen is kind of an overlooked card, but I really like him since he's a 3 energy 1 power unit with 3 might that can be played with reaction timing and has shield 2 and tank, which means that if you keep him in your hand after you Divine Judgment, on future turns, he can be played as a reaction to help you defend any battlefield you hold with 5 might since of the shield 2 triggers. So this is just another way to surprise get you 5 might from hand, hold that final battlefield to get the win. Lastly, Sett Kingpin can be used in any Order deck, and if Sett gets a single buff, which we often can do, he can move to a battlefield and get 7 might since he sees himself. So that's it for all of the Order cards. Now I want to break down each Order leader and talk about how they can specifically synergize with Divine Judgment to better counter Kai'Sa's. First up, we have Sett, and he's the Order leader I've actually played the most. Sett has some strong units that once we buff them, they hit those 5 and 7 might breakpoints, and he has built-in protection in his kit of buffed units. This lets him really contest and fight the board post Divine Judgment and makes Kai'Sa really hard to just cleanly get rid of any of his units. I use the Order Sett Kingpin as my chosen champion, which once buffed at a battlefield has that key 7 might breakpoint since he sees himself with his ability. We also run Fiora and Quiana, both of which have deflect and naturally are just pains in the ass since just to target them with spells, it actually causes Kai'Sa to recycle runes, and we all know if Kai'Sa actually has to pay for her spells, she's not that strong. Leona also has buffs built into her kit. When she stuns a unit, she gives out a buff. Her kit actually has some really good cards built into it by being in the calm green color. Firstly, she has 2 really good gears into Kai'Sa, Zhonya's Hourglass and Spirit Refuge. With the Hourglass protecting units from dying and Spirit Refuge giving all your buff units deflect, this is like the scariest thing to a Kai'Sa player. Them having to actually pay for their spells, and without their spells, her early units are just not that threatening, and if she can't play her spells, she's kind of just stuck in a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. Specifically though, Leona has access to Calm Green's stuns, and the combat tricks that are actually really efficient and good about getting around her spells if you don't have your deflect cards out. Her stuns can be super cheap with cards like Rune Prison, and Discipline lets her keep her units alive and around, keeping up the pressure post Divine Judgment. And also it has this built-in card draw stapled onto it, so if you play Discipline, well, you really also don't lose a card in hand, which is really important after you Judgment because you only have 2. And if you want to remove one of Kai'Sa's 2 units that she left in the battlefield, well, we have access to Charm, which lets us move a unit anywhere we want. So we can take a unit Kai'Sa thinks is safely at her base and move it to one of our battlefields where we have one of our 5 might shielded unit that they really can't do anything about. You know, if they have these tiny small spells that they're going to try and play against us, we still get Defies. And Defy can defy any of her early spells except for Falling Star. And that's pretty good. Only having one out to something that we can do really also sets Kai'Sa back pretty hard. And like I mentioned before, Leona having access to a couple hidden cards can really let her cheat Divine Judgment's only 2 claws. We can hide these on our battlefields to allow us to keep more value, which is going to be big on the following turns. We're looking at Zhonya's Hourglass and Hidden Blade here, both of which are pretty good after you Divine Judgment and can effectively be played for free the turn you do Divine Judgment because you're recycling those runes anyway. Next up is Viktor, and Viktor gets to run Mind Blue, giving him access to Thousand-Tailed Watcher, which I believe is the strongest card in the game, and a bunch of card draw. Specifically, where I think Viktor can shine with Divine Judgment is that you can always just make a recruit and keep building your board. On your next turn, no matter what, you can play a recruit with his leader ability. If you channeled 8 runes the turn that you Divine Judgment, well, you can actually just Divine Judgment and then play 1 recruit afterwards, kind of giving you, again, this way to cheat around the only 2 claws by playing a 3rd really cheap unit to your board. Yes, the recruit is just a 1 might guy, but being able to consistently contest both battlefields with sheer numbers is just so strong. The ability to just reliably play recruits every turn also can kind of help Viktor decide what he wants to keep after he Divine Judgments. You can keep more combat tricks and removals in their hand to help bend everything to your favor because you're consistently making dudes. Plus, in Mind, you get card draw cards that can just help you rebuild your hand. A really good play that I think Viktor could do is the turn after you Divine Judgment. You will have 4 runes, so playing like a Lecturing Yordle and a recruit puts immense pressure on the board because now you threaten both battlefields from your base, and you've drawn a card, so you effectively didn't lose a card in hand this turn. Darius also has a lot of potential. I know most people play Darius as a baited hook deck, which I do think is a strong deck, but I'm not sure he gets to 7 energy that often, but I do know Darius likes to run seals, and seals can actually really help this strategy. Seals let us get to Divine Judgment since we can mitigate power requirements and let us get to 7 energy more efficiently while still slamming strong cards. And seals also help us post Divine Judgment because we still get to play strong cards without having to recycle some of our precious runes since we only have 4 of them on our next turn, letting us continue to get powerful cards out and not have to pay the price for them. Darius's Legion ability also here is uniquely good, where he gets to basically play Legion and get an energy to use something, and we can exploit this specifically with seals. If you don't know, in Riftbound, you can float energy, meaning you can tap a rune and then recycle that rune before spending any energy gained. For instance, if you have 6 runes on the field, a Seal of Order and Divine Judgment in your hand, you can tap one of your runes to float an energy. Then play the Seal of Order, which turns on Darius's Legion ability. Tap Darius to add the other energy to your energy pool, pumping you to 2 energy in your pool and 5 untapped runes. Now you just tap your 5 runes and you have 7 energy. That's what you need to play Divine Judgment, a turn early and often as a surprise. With seals and baited hook, once again, you are running a lot of gear that Kai'Sa doesn't run. So often we get that extra value from keeping the 2 gear claws of Divine Judgment, where most decks don't. Then we can get out our Dravens and our Vise to help us overrun Kai'Sa later on, because both of these are kind of big cards that have low energy cost, and that's really strong. And the last leader I want to look at, because again, we're not looking at Garen, is Lux. Lux is the same colors as Viktor, so once again, you have good access to card draw in Mind Blue. 2 things about Lux is different though, and does grant her own section where Garen didn't do anything better than Sett, so I don't really think he deserved his own. Lux's legend says when you cast a spell with 5 or more energy, draw a card. So after we Judgment, we already get +1 card in hand. hand, so that's pretty cool. The other thing we get is Lux's Chosen Champion, which is a 4 energy 2 might unit with the reaction, tap her to add 2 energy to your pool, use only to cast spells. This can mean a few things. We do have to protect her. She can die like to any of Kai'Sa's spells, but if she lives a single turn, we can Divine Judgment on our next turn. Since we took 4 energy to bring her out, on the next turn we'd have 6 runes, and by tapping 2 we'd have a pool of 8. Usually though, this might not be the best idea because we aren't late enough in the game to really capitalize on Divine Judgment and get the final points before Kai'Sa can actually do anything. But later on in the game, if you've used a lot of your power, this could be something you could do. But something else Lux can do on the follow-up to her Divine Judgment turn, if you're super lucky to have Grand Stratagem in hand, as well as the power to pay for it, you can Grand Stratagem on the turn after you Divine Judgment, which really puts you over the top. It gives you a lot of might very early on, and maybe if you're at 6 points, you can conquer both battlefields really easily. Lux also can just let us react and add 2 energy to our pool to use reaction spells after we Divine Judgment on our opponent's turn to maybe help remove something or keep our stuff alive when we probably shouldn't have. Lux does have some minor benefits to playing Divine Judgment. She's not completely worthless, and I don't think Lux gets enough love. But all of this does make her uniquely interesting. So that's what I have for you today. I'm not saying you're gonna win every single game with Divine Judgment, and I'm not even saying that it's an easy card to use correctly. It does take time and practice to truly understand when's the right time to Divine Judgment. And I'm positive a few of you will even try this out and tell me later on that Divine Judgment didn't work for you and I suck and it sucks. And that's okay. I just hope that at least one of you will say you used Divine Judgment and it won you games into Kai'Sa and frustrated the Kai'Sa player, because I know it has for me. Just remember, when you use Divine Judgment, try to hit 5 or 7 might break points. Try to keep removal and combat tricks to clean up what your opponent keeps on the field. Score points early on so Kai'Sa can't recover in time, and you can really step on the gas once you Divine Judgment. Battlefields really matter. If you like a specific battlefield and strategy with your Divine Judgment, use it. And most importantly, don't panic. Kai'Sa probably will have more points than you, but remember, she didn't win until she gets to her 8th point. So you have time, once you Divine Judgment, with a good plan, to come back. If you have Divine Judgment in hand, I promise you, you're not cooked. And I hope this video helped you. If you liked the video, please consider subscribing and liking. It does really help me out. If you would like to support me financially, I do have a TCG Player affiliate link and a YouTube membership button, both of which I will put in the description below. Also, consider joining the Discord. It's completely free, and it's a place that I hope will grow into somewhere we can deck build and discuss the game and look for games. I'm sorry that this was an epic card and it's not some cheap common that really helps. I promise I don't own like 100 Divine Judgments, and I'm just trying to like pump up their price. I did trade for a playset to run in all my decks though. With that, have a wonderful day and see ya.